Hello Internet, Seth Skorokowski, and today we'll be taking a look at the solo role-playing game 1000-Year-Old Vampire. Written by Tim Hutchings and published in 2020 to much acclaim and awards. I learned of it when I was reading a thread of people who were listing the most beautiful RPG books they owned, and several people mentioned 1000-Year-Old Vampire, so I picked it up. So what is 1000-Year-Old Vampire? It's a solo-player journaling role-playing game where you get to play an immortal vampire. And as the centuries roll on, you gain and lose loved ones, enemies, resources, and memories. You'll likely have to make terrible choices and commit some gruesome acts in order to survive. But as time takes its toll and material things come and go, the true desperation comes from memory. As your brain can only hold so much, large chunks of your unlife fade until you can no longer remember your loved ones or your original name or what you even did to have created your enemies.
This is a pretty dark game that's intended for mature players. Besides the fact that your character can get called upon to do some pretty gruesome things such as murdering all their friends or their loved ones, the core themes of the game are memory and loss, which a lot of younger gamers might not find that appealing.
Players track the events of their existence in a journal, either a physical journal for those of you out there who can read your own handwriting, or in my case, do it on a Word document. Now, before we talk about the game, I do want to take a moment to talk about this book, because it's kind of amazing.
So it's a digest-sized book with this gold foil that's kind of run across it. It's done like an old journal with these stickers on it. And it's got this kind of wear and tear that you can see. So it really sells the look that this is an old journal that you found in a library or more notably in a used bookstore or something. As you can see, there's a price tag that they found in there and that little stains across it. It's very thick paper and it's been sewn in place so it's not going to come apart on you anytime. It's got these little things that are kind of stuck in the sides to kind of give it that feel again, like this is a journal that somebody regularly uses and kind of stuck these little artifacts in here. And everything about this book really sells the mood that this is an old book that the player is going through. And it's got all these, little damage and everything to it. It's absolutely gorgeous. And one of my favorite parts of it is in the back where, we have the ubiquitous what is a role-playing game section that you seem to always have. It says, what is a role-playing game? And it says the single most crucial thing to understand. And then it's all covered up with different photographs and artifacts, like a little plug of hair. This is a stunningly beautiful book. It is just wonderful to flip through. There has been so much that has been put into it, and you can always find new little artifacts and whatnot. It's just a wonderful, wonderful tabletop book.
Now let's talk about character creation. Characters consist of 5 parts. Skills, what they're capable of. Resources, which are useful assets or items of personal value. Characters, which are people the vampire has a notable relationship with, either mortal or immortal. Marks, physical indicators that character is an undead monster. And memories, which are the important moments of a vampire's life. Memories are the backbone of the game, and we'll get into them a little bit more as we go into how to play, but the important thing about it is your character can only carry 5 memories, each of which is made up of 3 one-sentence experiences. The book gives us a character sheet for this, and I don't really know how useful it is. You're going to need a whole lot more room for the memories category, but it's at least a good visual reminder of what categories that you're going to need to track in order to play it. To make your character, you first have to begin with who they were in life. So, you choose a time, some point in the distant past, their name, where they're from, and what it is they can do, and what it is they have. Now, this can be pretty neat to do depending on how much you want to dig into real history and getting lost into various Wikipedia holes. Maybe they were a Roman senator, a Celtic blacksmith, a Japanese fisherman, a French knight, a Mongol warrior, whatever it is that you want them to be. So you write a memory that encapsulates your life. You're also going to create 3 mortal characters who are important to you. Now these can be friends, family, lovers, rivals, debtors, whatever it is you like. You'll choose some important skills and resources that your character has at your disposal, and then you're going to write down some memories as to why these things are important to you or how you came about having them. Now my character was from Venice, and he was a guard in the Doge's palace, and I had a small house that I had with my new wife, a best friend who had 3 daughters, and a silver-hilted sword, which I'd hoped to use one day to kill an enemy who had killed my own brother in a duel, and also had a jeweled ring that the Doge had awarded me after I had foiled an assassination's attempt on his life. Now, once you have your character ready, it's time to make them a vampire. The rules as far as what vampires are pretty open and not restricted to any particular lore, so you can just kind of make this up however you want it to be. Now, they should prey on human beings for sustenance, which in my case, my character ate the victim's hearts. They should seek to camouflage themselves among those on which they feed. They should have been human once and still have some human needs in some sense or another. They should be susceptible to some environmental danger that wouldn't harm regular mortals, such as sunlight or gold or holy symbols or some particular herb, whatever you like. They should also be practically immortal, a loner, and finally, they should have some permanent mark that reveals their true nature. Now, this mark can be all kinds of things, whatever you want it to be, such as, giant bat wings that grew out of their back and they had to saw them off, but now bloody stumps remain that they have to kind of keep hidden underneath their clothes, or maybe a slashed throat, and now they have to cover up their neck so nobody sees that there's a big slash through their throat, or maybe they have slitted eyes that glow, or a trailing specter that's only visible in dim light. So get creative with whatever your mark is.
Me, I went with the old classic, fangs. Nothing says vampire like a pair of fangs. What'd you go with?
The vampire made me cut out my heart atop a church altar, so I always had to conceal under my clothes the fact that my rib cage was torn open and you could see that I didn't have a heart.
Holy crap, that is hardcore. These things keep poking me in the lip, so it's kind of like a wound that never heals, so, the same thing, I guess.
Once we've become a vampire and we've noted that experience down as well as the immortal character, it is time to play. The game itself is pretty simple. Inside the book are pages upon pages of prompts. So starting with 1, you then roll a D10 and subtract a D6 from it and then go to whatever that prompt is. So if I rolled a D10 and I got an 8, then I rolled a D6 and I got a 2, 8 minus 2 is 6, so I go to prompt number 6, where a new mortal character begins serving me. And then I note down this is one of the events in one of my memory slots. I create a new mortal character, and then once finished, I roll a D10 and a D6 again and go to whatever prompt that leads me to. If you come up with a negative, then you go back that many spaces, or if you get a 0, you just stick to the same prompt, but then move down to the one below it, which is a continuation of events that have already occurred. Events are noted as a single sentence in your memories. Now, here the book is kind of lenient on what they call a sentence. For example, with the remaining McAllen clan in tow, I flee to China. They confiscate our arms, but I am recognized as a gentleman and made guest of a powerful bureaucrat. Or, in the humid jungle climate, insects burrow into my body. I coat myself in poisons to stay their feeding. This fleshy shell horrifies me. Well, technically, yes, those are all single sentences, with single semicolons and em dashes. I can't think of a single editor that I've ever had that wouldn't just red pin those up into multiple sentences.
The point, though, is that you're trying to keep all of these experiences short and punchy. So instead of trying to keep it beneath a single sentence, and now you're trying to work out all the punctuation in order to pull that off, maybe just limit yourself by a certain word count or character count, such as a single tweet.
As you play, you're going to gain and lose resources and skills. The characters that you know are going to die, maybe by your own hand or maybe from old age. The whole time you're going to be noting these events down in your memories, but eventually you're going to run out of memory slots, and you can save some of those in diaries that you turn into physical resources that you carry with you, freeing up that space in your mind, but also making them vulnerable to being lost or destroyed or having to sell them off in order to fund your escape of some sort of danger.
Large chunks of your life are going to vanish, and it starts becoming difficult figuring out which memories to lose in order to make room for new ones. You might forget your original life, and your original loved ones might not even remember what it was like to be human.
If a prompt requires that you lose a skill or a resource, but you have no skills or resources available to lose, then your character is slain and you describe how it was that they were killed. Or if you make it to the final prompts in the book, which give an end game for each of those, all in all, the whole game took me about 3.5 to 4 hours to play, and that was spread across 2 sessions, and from what I've read about others' experience, that seems pretty normal for this game.
So how did you do when you played it?
It was a pretty exciting life. After murdering my wife and family, I then fled across Italy as an artist who was mixing blood with my paints. But eventually a vampire hunter caught me and branded a cross in my face, which I then had to keep covered for the rest of my existence. But I managed to get away from him, and then I kind of traveled across Europe under, different names and doing different jobs, till eventually I had to flee to the colonies of the New World, and I became this feral monster that was out in the woods feeding on colonists. But eventually, I met a woman who had read the book that I had published of how I became a vampire, and she was hoping that maybe I could make her one as well. So she brought me back into civilization and taught me some new skills how I could survive here. But eventually, I betrayed her, and then I opened up a hotel that I then kind of had different guests come in, and I'd occasionally feed off of them. But eventually, I got enough money and enough influence that I opened up a chain of hotels across the world, and I've been able to travel between them and just carry on my existence forever.
Holy crap, you survived it all?
Overall, I found 1,000-Year-Old Vampire to be a pretty cool experience. I confess that I rolled my eyes at first when I read about, how dark and emotionally straining this game can get, but it definitely delivered in that department. And while any RPG really only gives you what you put into it, it's even more so with solo role-playing games because you're the only player there. No one is going to help you out with that, so you can only get what you put into it. So players not only need to be the type that would enjoy a solo journaling game, but also in the right mood and frame of mind in order to get the most out of it.
Now, one use for this game is it can help you make your bad guy for another game that you're playing. So let's say you're playing some Call of Cthulhu, or D&D, or freaking Vampire, right? You want to make your big immortal bad guy. Well, this game is how you do it. So now when the player characters are looking up their history and the legends and any sort of rumors about them, that's what you made in this game. Maybe they can find one of those old, moldy, lost diaries that has some history that the vampire forgot. Maybe something that could be used against it. Or maybe the player characters could find one of the vampire's enemies or descendants of one of their enemies, and they could team up to take it out.
That brings up a good point. While I do enjoy going over all the real history in which my vampire lived, there's nothing wrong at all with setting this story in a fantastical world. So if you want to set this in your D&D setting or the like, then just go for it. And because the game's definition of what a vampire is pretty loose, you can make this a lich or some sort of other undead horror that's feeding off the magical life essence instead of blood. Now, as beautiful as this book is and as cool as the experience was in playing it, I don't really see myself playing 1,000-Year-Old Vampire again. Nothing against it, but as I played it, I figured out that journaling RPGs really aren't my jam, and if I wanted to write a book, then I just write a book. Again. So journaling RPGs just aren't my personal taste, but I can see the appeal that others would have for them, so I do recommend it for those people. You can pick up a copy of 1,000-Year-Old Vampire up off their website as a physical book in PDF or as a PDF on DriveThruRPG. If you are looking for a cool and beautiful solo journaling RPG experience, I suggest checking it out.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you want to see some more of our stuff, such as game reviews or how-tos, just hit that subscribe button. And if you want to support Seth's channel, consider picking up one of his books and novels. God knows he ain't pretty enough to have an OnlyFans or a calendar or nothing like that, so this is all he's got. So who knows, maybe you'll even enjoy it. Till next time, gamers, you have a great day. Yeah, this could really use some scotch.